I've always had a love for films and video games, and knew that sooner or later I would start doing reviews on GGP's YouTube channel. And since winter is still upon us, the days are short, no one wants to work in the cold, and the weather is as unpredictable as that nutball from Far Cry 3, I decided that this was as good a time as any to go down that path. But rather than talk about one of the big releases, I decided to dedicate this video to discussing a certain independent short that came out recently, entitled C, 299,792 kilometers per second. Quite the mouthful, isn't it? One of the more interesting trends that I've noticed is an increase in the number of independent projects that have been funded through fundraising websites such as Kickstarter and Indiegogo. These include but are not limited to the video game FTL, the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, and the upcoming video game Star Citizen, which managed to raise over $7 million on fan donations alone. That is really damn impressive. And because of these websites, independent shorts like this are not only possible, but enable the creators to do whatever they want without a major studio overlord trying to micromanage everything that they do. Which brings us to today's subject, the independent retro-style sci-fi short, C, 299,792 kilometers per second. You know, I'm just gonna call it C, the speed of light from now on, because that's too much of a mouthful. Now, talking about the plot of a short is a little difficult because you may inadvertently spoil something, but here it is in a nutshell. The story follows an idealistic flight officer who hijacks her spaceship during an interplanetary Cold War, and every now and then cuts to a 70s-80s style educational film that helps push the overarching themes. And that's all I can really say without giving too much away, but it really digs into the ideas of interplanetary travel, the expanding of the human race beyond our current solar system, and the transformations of creations of progress into weapons of war and vice versa. And these things are done very effectively through the dialogue and the back and forth editing between the distant future and the 70s style footage. Now, given that this is a short, there really aren't too many noteworthy characters to speak of, but we do get some very effective writing in the forms of Lieutenant Commander Malik and Second Lieutenant Kai. Malik is our ship hijacking protagonist, and we really don't know why she's doing this throughout a good chunk of the short, and I was pleasantly surprised by her true goal, and think that anyone who watches this will be too. As far as the Second Lieutenant goes, he kind of serves as an audience stand-in, in that, like him, we really don't know what the Lieutenant Commander is planning, and we're not sure if we should be rooting for her or not. Unfortunately, this brings us to the short's biggest problem, which is the acting.
Porter rewired these welders. At max, one shot drains an entire cell. It shouldn't cause permanent injury.
And dear God, does it suck! To put it simply, they all sounded like robots. Just about everyone in this short sounded like they were doing their best HAL 9000 Gladys impression, and it's almost hilarious. Every actor in this had a very odd monotone voice and a complete lack of facial expressions, and it can be very off-putting. But thankfully, the writing does carry you through the short, and it's very possible to look past once it gets going. Now, one of the things that the filmmakers really pushed was the fact that this is a retro-style sci-fi short that used only in-camera and practical effects. And was this a breath of fresh air? Now, I don't mean to sound like one of the endless number of people who complain about CG just because it's CG, but often practical effects can and will look better than their CGI counterparts. The ships they use, for example, are all models and miniatures, and they look just as, if not more, convincing than the CGI ships in big-budgeted sci-fi films like Prometheus or Star Trek. The interior of the ship likewise has an old-school feel to it that classical sci-fi buffs will appreciate. However, I'm not entirely sure if this is for the better. While it's obvious that this is the look they were going for, it had an almost analog feel to it, which might put a few modern viewers off. I also can't help but nitpick at the design of the weapons and welders used within this short. I could easily buy that they were in a spaceship, but these guns look like blocks of wood or retrofitted gun-shaped lighters or something. It was just odd. In the grand scheme of things, it's a minor complaint, I guess, but it's still something I can't help but scratch my head at. The last thing worth noting is the music, which, like everything else, has a kind of retro feel to it and almost reminded me of the music from Mass Effect, just less theatrical sounding. Personally, the music wasn't my cup of tea, but I can't deny that it was probably one of the most effective scores I've ever heard in a film. With all that in mind, we come to our final verdict, which is a 7.5 out of 10. It is a great short and helped prove to me that good sci-fi doesn't always have to have big budgets or flashy special effects in order to work, and the storytelling and themes involved in this are very effective. Its only real fault is the acting, and it does bring it down a few notches and will be hard for some to look past. But if you're a fan of sci-fi old and new, then I highly recommend that you check this one out. It's only 15 minutes long, it's free to watch, and is worth every second that you will put into it. So until next time, please subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to check out this short. It deserves your time, and these people deserve success.